This review will cover the case of the Unabomber. It started in 1978, where he started putting bombs in universities or outside stores in anti-technology reasons, and he did it for 18 years, and he did it till 1987. Then he disappeared for several years, and then he reemerged, and his was sent into people's homes, and the people would actually be killed as a result of the bombing. And let me get a little more information about this on the screen here. It's quite a case here. One moment, please.
And he didn't know the man it was addressed to. Campus security guard Terry Marker cracked, maybe it's a bomb. As bombs go, it wasn't much of one. It began a 20-year streak of violence that would stump the FBI and terrorize the nation. On November 15, 1979, American Airlines Flight 444 took off from Chicago, bound for Washington, D.C. As the Boeing 727 reached cruising altitude, the cabin filled with smoke. It was pandemonium. The plane was diverted to Dulles Airport in Virginia. A dozen people were treated for smoke inhalation. But for a faulty wire in the bomb, over 100 people would have been killed. Bombing an airliner is a federal offense. The FBI was called in. FBI agent Chris Ronay examined the evidence of the airline bomb.
It essentially was a wooden box that looked to be hand-fashioned, handmade. We found that it contained a barometric switch and some other initiating components, batteries, wires, and a container for the explosive charge. The barometric switch would function when the pressure...
That's some early information about how the Unabomber case started, and let me advance this a bit, and one moment, please.
It was a pipe bomb. Fortunately, it was a dud. Investigators now had a device intact. Perhaps a component was traceable. It would take time to find out. The Unabomber remained busy. In the spring of 1982, a package meant for Professor Leroy Wood Berenson blew up instead in the hands of an academic assistant at Vanderbilt University. The bomb was made of the usual materials, with the initials FC on the surviving wreckage. Examiners spent endless hours studying every minute detail of the Unabomber devices. The most bizarre clues suddenly emerged. The last two people specifically targeted were named Wood.
Wood played such an important role in every one of the bombs. I mean, it was present in every one of the bombs, even when it didn't need to be. He, in fact, if he didn't have wood and he threw wood in it, sticks of wood just so they'd be there. There were references to wood in addresses and names of people throughout.
And that's a little more information. The Unabomber appeared to have a infatuation with wood, and let me get a more information on the screen here. Here's...
On November 15, 1985, Dr. James McConnell, a psychology professor at the University of Michigan, received a letter and package from a Ralph C. Kloppenberg. The center described himself as a doctoral student. "I'd like you to read this book," he wrote. "Everyone in your position should read this book." As he read, his assistant opened the package nearby. The explosion seriously injured the assistant and blew out the hearing of Dr. McConnell. Examiners continued to dissect the bombs. They were evolving as the Unabomber refined his craft. Exhaustive lab tests showed they were getting more sophisticated and more powerful.
As you can see, the Unabomber was improving. His bombs were getting more and more potent. And let me advance this a bit.
Dr. Charles Epstein is a renowned geneticist at the University of San Francisco. On June 22, 1993, he sat down at his kitchen table to open his mail, including a padded envelope which had arrived that day. The blast critically injured Dr. Epstein. After 2.5 hours of surgery, he was stabilized and very lucky to be alive. Two days later, on June 24th, Dr. David Galerter, a prominent computer scientist at Yale University, arrived early at his office to open his mail from the previous day. Injured in his right arm, eye, and abdomen, Galerter struggled to his feet and went out the door for help. The FBI quickly determined that the Epstein bomb and the Galerter bomb were identical.
And there's some more information about his bombing spree. And let me advance this a bit. It's hard to get all of this in a quick video here. One moment.
The work of the Unabomber. A few months later, Ted Kaczynski prepared for an extended visit to the West Coast. This trip would be his busiest to date. On April 19, 1995, Ted Kaczynski was in the San Francisco Bay Area when Timothy McVeigh's 2,000-pound fuel oil bomb destroyed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 people. Ted would not let his agenda be eclipsed by the devastation in Oklahoma. The next day, April 20th, the nation still reeling over Oklahoma City, Kaczynski mailed 5 items, 4 letters, and a parcel. Within a few days, the mail arrived back east. First was a letter to the New York Times. FBI Special Agent Terry Turchie was second in command of the Unabomber Task Force.
In the letter to the New York Times, he mentioned that he was claiming responsibility for the attacks on Thomas Moser, Charles Epstein, and David Galerter. He also mentioned some of his goals and objectives and said that he was thinking of sending a manuscript, an essay, and that he wanted them to consider publishing that essay. And if they did, he would make an agreement to cease committing terrorist acts.
The second letter received was to recent victim David Galerter at Yale, still recovering from his April wounding. The letter was taunting. Dr. Galerter, people with advanced degrees are not as smart as they think they are.
And the Unabomber wanted a manuscript printed, and let me get a little more of this on the screen. Eventually it led to his downfall. One moment, please.
Not yet convinced. He wrote Ted an urgent letter. Though he did not reveal his suspicions, he requested a visit to Montana. Ted refused his brother's request. David decided to call a private investigator to look into the matter, but the news that the private eye brought him was not encouraging. The private eye submitted the manifesto along with some of Ted's writing to be analyzed by experts who didn't know the parties involved. The experts concluded that the authors had a strong chance of being the same person. Frantically, David continued his search for anything Ted had ever written to him. In an old trunk, he came across the essay Ted had sent him back in 1971. David could no longer hide from the reality that his brother might be the Unabomber.
And his brother David was eventually able to figure out that Ted Kaczynski was the Unabomber. And let me get a little more of this on the screen here. One moment, please.
They walked toward his cabin speaking loudly. They didn't want Kaczynski to suspect there was anybody sneaking up on him. The officers asked him to help identify a property line on their map. As he turned to get his coat, the officers pounced on Kaczynski. The suspected Unabomber was in custody. Kaczynski was immediately taken for questioning to a temporary forward command post. Jim Freeman was about to come face to face with the man that had eluded the FBI for nearly 2 decades.
He looked just absolutely disheveled.
And they finally were able to catch up to him. After they printed the manifesto, people recognized it. His brother did, and they were able to narrow the search to Ted Kaczynski. And he was living in Montana. And let me get a little more information. One moment, please.
He brought the following morning. He was led through the streets on national television, looking every bit the part of an eccentric hermit. He was presented the next day before a judge in Helena on a charge of possession of bomb-making equipment. The search of the cabin continued. The room was a gold mine, but a dangerous one. Each container, each book, each binder needed to be x-rayed for explosive devices. It was clearly going to take a long time to search the tiny cabin.
And that's kind of the story, but he was eventually arrested. He did bombings for 18 years. It was very difficult for law enforcement to catch him because he operated by mail. And if you remember this case, hopefully this quick flashback here, hearing about it for the first time, hopefully I was able to get enough video here for a good review, and that should do it. Let me get a final screen on here.